So we'll continue on with part two of the story of Sydney Teerhuis. If you missed part one, just to catch you up to speed, essentially, Susan Sarandon's in town, J-Lo's in town, Richard Gere's in Winnipeg. They're shooting a movie, Shall We Dance? This guy breaks into Susan Sarandon's trailer, steals her jewelry. He's trying to hawk the jewelry at a Woodbine Hotel bar. Comes across a guy. Guy says, "Look, I don't want the jewelry. Why don't you come sit down here, have a beer?" He puts his hand on his knee. I guess that's the signal. These are two indigenous men, homosexual. They go back to the guy's hotel, the one of them who has a place to stay. They engage in, some homosexual activities. They have a date, a romantic date. Throughout the rest of the day, they celebrating Canada Day together. Next thing you know, the guy pulls up to the city jail and tells them that he just killed a man. The guard's like, whoa, don't tell us anything else. Let's get the police here. Tells the police operator, same thing. Look, I killed a guy. He's dead. He's in my bathtub. They're like, what? Hold on. We'll send the cops. The cops come down there. What are you talking about? He's telling them, look, I keep telling everybody, I killed this guy. Like, I don't know how many people I got to tell. Well, what happened? He's telling everybody the same story. They're like, well, let's show us. Go back to the hotel. They get to the hotel, and the guy has butchered a man to death in his bed and then dragged him to the bathroom and dismembered him and posed him like a psychopathic serial killer or something. Like something you'd see Jeffrey Dahmer or Hannibal Lecter. It's just this nightmare fuel. And that shook this police officer even to his own very core. So at this point, the coroner's van pulls up after the police are locking down the scene, and three homicide detectives show up, and four crime scene technicians, and the coroner's obviously there in the van, and so the police enter the hotel and go to room 309, and a crowd had started to gather outside the hotel, and CTV News has showed up. And not long after, other TV news organizations began to arrive with them, as came the many curious onlookers. Someone was heard asking if the scene was being filmed as part of a movie. It's just a flock of people. There's all this attention. Like, what's going on? Are they shooting a movie there too, or what is this? And there's Sydney Teerhuis. He's sitting handcuffed in the back of the police car, taking in the whole scene. All this attention just for him. No one seemed to really take notice of him sitting there quietly there in the cop car. After about 10 minutes or so, two officers appeared from the hotel and returned to the cruiser. The three of them then proceeded in silence to the public safety building, the jail, or to the police headquarters. And crime scene investigators searching the room had discovered Susan Sarandon's stolen necklace in the midst of the murder horror spectacle. So they said, oh yeah, we've been looking for this necklace. We got to report that thing got stolen. That's weird. What the hell's it doing here? It was reported stolen. Apparently this guy must have broke into the trailer and stole it, and he's apparently at the bar trying to sell it. That's what we're all told. So the accused killed the victim. So Sydney Teerhuis killed Robin Greene, is the victim of this homicide. Greene was stabbed 68 times in the chest, neck, and upper arms. He was disemboweled, decapitated, dismembered, eviscerated, and chopped into 8 clean pieces. The body was carefully placed in a bathtub of the accused suite in Winnipeg Hotel. Greene's clothes were neatly placed next to his body parts. No internal organs were located with the body. His right eye was missing. Symbolic. Won't get into that. His left eye had been punctured and deflated. So, I don't know. Maybe they're just going for the eyes both, but eyes, very symbolic. The A forensic pathologist testified that it would take at least 2 or 3 hours to perform all of these acts. So the guy's trying to do the math. He's like, look, I've seen some things, and just butchering a human in this fashion takes time. Now, we're talking at least 2-3 hours to do this. Just logistically. Minimum. You don't just, oh, I'm kind of drunk, or what happened? No, this is methodical. 2-3 hours of work. One might argue, a masterpiece? At 9:22 a.m. on July the 2nd, the accused turned himself in at the Winnipeg Remand Center. He told the shift supervisor that he went drinking the day before. When he woke up, he found the dead body chopped up in his bathtub. I don't really know what happened. Found a body there. And then, I told him to call the police. He did so. He told him he killed somebody, chopped them up, put him in the bathtub. They said, what'd you use? He said, I used a knife. He was still on the floor in the bathroom when they went there. He said he blacked out. When he woke up, he saw a dead body lying in the bathtub. Police were dispatched and arrived at the remand center 9:41 a.m. They spoke to the accused. He admitted killing him. He was arrested for the murder. Police took him to the apartment. He entered the apartment or the hotel room with the accused and, using the key, discovered the grisly scene as described. He was taken to the police station, charged, and detained in custody. Open and shut. He confessed to it. The guy's body's in the bathtub. It's done. He was done. While in custody, the accused wrote numerous letters and drawings. He sent some to a journalist who he was told was interested in writing a book about the killing. He sent one to a publisher of a series of book adaptations of classic literature. The accused described in letters and drawings many acts upon Greene, which the accused said he had performed, but of which at trial he claimed to have no memory. So, at this point, if you look at a picture of Sidney Teerhuis, he identifies as Indigenous and Aboriginal, but he looks like an average pudgy white guy. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you, and I'll put one up in the video, but he's about as Indigenous as I am. Let's not disrespect anybody, but, I don't know. I'm saying, oh, it's Indigenous, not Indigenous, and that. And I kind of said to myself, that's not common. But he is like Métis or something, I guess. I don't know. If you saw him, I think you would say he's white. But you'll see yourself. You can judge for yourself. He's trying to get a book deal. I don't know what's going on. So he testified at trial. The details in his writings and in his drawings were just fiction, and that he learned of the information from stories he read about the incident and productions which had been made during the course of the criminal proceeding at trial. The accused testified that he consumed substantial intoxicants, both alcohol and drugs. The 24 hours approximately leading up to the murder, he said he consumed essentially the same quantities of intoxicants as had Greene, whose blood alcohol at the time of death was to the order of 0.296. Nearly 4 times, about 3.5 times the legal limit for drunk driving. So he's very drunk. Evidence was adduced at trial from a bartender who had seen the accused on 2 occasions at the afternoon of July 1st, and as well from the remand employee, the police telephone operator, the police who attended the arrest and arrested the accused on July 2nd. While the bartender testified she couldn't say whether the accused was sober or drunk, she said he did not appear to be drunk or to have any trouble walking or talking. Each of the remand center supervisors and the arresting officers said that the accused appeared sober and that there was no smell of liquor emanating from him on the morning of July 2nd. The police telephone operator testified he sounded sober and normal to her at the commencement of the trial. The accused admitted that he had unlawfully caused Greene's death and that he had stabbed, dismembered, disemboweled, castrated, and decapitated Mr. Greene. However, he denied that he had the intention to kill him and that he had no recollection of doing so. The accused is an Aboriginal man who is a member of the Little Grand Rapids Band and a registered Indian under the Indian Act. So, he knows what he's up against, and he's trying to get this thing played down from first degree. He was a resident of Winnipeg at the time of the defense. More than a dozen letters Teerhuis wrote to an aspiring screenwriter wanting to do a movie on the case have been seized by police and tendered as exhibits in the trial. So you tend not to want to, push for your book deal until maybe your trial's over. I don't know. But not doing his lawyer a lot of favors there. In them, Teerhuis-Moar referred to Greene as a human trophy and claimed to have performed multiple sex acts on him both before and after he was dead. So, very Dahmer, very necrophiliac. Didn't have to really rape the man. He was cooperative. But that didn't seem to do it for him. He was trying to drink him unconscious, I assume, so he could have his way with him and then murder him and then have his way with him some more. Bought him all the beer he needed to get him there. And unfortunately, Greene didn't see it coming. Just enjoying himself, having lots of sex, drinking. He figured he found himself the man of his dreams. Unfortunately, it became the man of our nightmares. And I'm not falling myself in with that community. I just mean, in general, people don't want to end up chopped up, dismembered with their organs seemingly where'd those organs go? Well, we'll get to that. I guess. So in one letter, he discussed his affection for serial killers such as Jeffrey Dahmer and made light of how Greene was dismembered. I guess you could say I'm a cut above the rest, he wrote. So now So now we're getting flippant about it. Like, you're in the middle of a murder trial and you're cracking wise. Anyways, he wrote, "Sometimes I can be a real pain in the gut." Oh, he's still going. "But I wouldn't fall to pieces over it. Just reading this, you must think I lost my head or something." Yo, bro, stop it. In another letter, he invited the screenwriter to visit him in jail. Come through. "Here's a visitor application for you to fill out," he wrote. "I'm sure it won't cost you an arm or a leg." So, not a remorseful guy, doesn't seem. The writer who communicated with Teerhuis admits he offered to pay Teerhuis a 30% cut of the profits from the book he planned to write on the case. He said Teerhuis even came up with the working title, Trophy Kill, and sent several drawings of possible covers. Teerhuis wanted creative control and his own picture to be on the front, along with at least 10 pages of photos inside, and suggested they sell t-shirts at his criminal trial. One excerpt from the letters Teerhuis wrote reads as follows: "When you kill someone, you experience a frenzy, a vehemence for what cannot be changed, the triumphs and trophies Greene's physical body had to offer when I carved him up. Having sex with a dead body was more powerful than anything you could fathom. The poetry of Greene's viscera, the inexplicable beauty of his intestines, elaborately coiled and foiled." What viscera? What intestines? "The rich aroma of fresh human meat. The sound of stainless steel cutting into bone, ripping out the lungs with my bare hands when Greene was sawed in half. The shreds of flesh hung from his ribcage like colorless frond, randomly stabbing his corpse, butchering him for the mere pleasure of it because I can. When you cut off a human arm or leg, then hold it and admire it, you are overwhelmed with this ideology that the victim was ultimately sacrificed for the right reasons. When I butchered Greene's body, watching the steel blade enter the body and the sensation of pulling it out again was beyond any moral connection. I treated the corpse like a side of beef, like Greene was a dead animal, and portioned him like a giant turkey, cutting off the arms and legs. Dear God. I mean, what? This is a random guy sitting in a bar in Winnipeg. Some guys trying to sell necklaces. Yeah, they happen to be gay men. Yeah, they hook up. And next thing you know, he's talking about pulling the guy's lungs out of his sawed in half chest cavity and holding the arm and admiring the sacrifice. And like, what the fuck? What? Well, obviously the writings ensured a rock-solid prosecution against Teerhuis, who was convicted of second-degree murder. Jurors rejected his claim the letters were fictional accounts meant to sensationalize the story to help get a book deal. Teerhuis also claimed he was intoxicated at the time of the killing and should be convicted of a lesser charge of manslaughter. He's trying to have his cake and eat it too, I guess, trying to game the system. He wanted the notoriety, but he didn't really want the consequence. The Crown called Teerhuis the personification of evil and said it was impossible for a person to be so intoxicated he wouldn't remember stabbing a man 68 times, cutting up his body with surgical-like precision over several hours, and disposing of his organs. We don't buy it. The jury in Winnipeg found Sidney Teerhuis-Moar guilty of second-degree murder in the 2003 killing of Robert and Greene at the downtown hotel and recommended he serve his at least 25 years in prison before being eligible for parole. So the mandatory minimum on a second degree is no parole for at least 10 years. So this sentence was more than double the minimum time served to be served before parole eligibility. So even though he pled it down to second degree, he still got a first degree type sentence. It didn't make any difference. And I mean, I don't think anybody's too shocked to hear that. Sidney Teerhuis appeared before the Manitoba Court of Appeal, arguing a second degree murder conviction should be overturned. His lawyer Greg Brodsky seems to catch... He fought for this one a lot harder than some of the other ones his name's come up in. He cited more than a dozen legal grounds to argue for a conviction on the lesser charge of manslaughter. You know, this one was a bit more of a fight. He didn't have stuff on camera, and it wasn't really as cut and dry or blatant. So he said, look, I haven't fought as hard for some of the guys, but let me see what I can do on this one. So he was trying to get a manslaughter. And, Teerhuis appeared frail at his hearing. He went from, big fat guy to looking kind of frail. He gone through a bout of flesh-eating disease, court heard. The thinner. And so he arrived in a wheelchair with a brace around his left leg and had to be assisted by sheriff's officers. Teerhuis had been serving his sentence in Saskatchewan, but was brought to Manitoba for the hearing. The Aboriginal man, and I don't... Look, he identifies as Aboriginal. He's accused of beheading and castrating another man. He lost the legal challenge in which he claimed Indigenous natives are unfairly discriminated against during jury selection. Again, I just have to emphasize, he doesn't look Indigenous at all. I look more Indigenous than this guy, literally. Like, he's not being discriminated against at all. Let's just be clear on that. But anyways, he felt he was. The chief ruled that his rights had not been violated. And Teerhuis, who was 35 years old by that point, argued that Manitoba's jury selection doesn't allow for true representation of the public to hear a criminal case, and therefore violated his charter rights. Teerhuis was seeking a true jury of his peers. He wanted to form a largely Aboriginal panel, again to hear his high-profile case. He killed an Aboriginal guy that looked prototypically Aboriginal. Long hair, down his back, thin, slender build guy, regular height. This is a short, pudgy white guy, and he's like, no, I need all Aboriginal, I need all Indigenous on this jury. Well, one of his main arguments is that Aboriginals are unfairly precluded from participating in jury duty because of a rule that prospective juries cannot have criminal records. Well, that's a little stereotypical, but I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that precludes any Indigenous people. I think, personally, it's that you're needing to be a citizen of the city that the case is held in most cases. That's where your address needs to be. And most Indigenous people don't list their address of residence as Winnipeg. That's my opinion, as a way bigger factor to why you rarely see Indigenous people on any juries. Outside of their own internal, tribal council legal proceedings. So he says, look, the criminal record thing, it's 61% of people who are incarcerated are Indigenous. Okay, but not 61 of Indigenous people are incarcerated. But yes, unfortunately, that is a fact in Canada. And defense lawyer Greg Brodsky argued that justice officials have created a system where the only people being selected for jury duty are elderly and the unemployed. That's probably pretty fair. Not a lot of people are showing up to it if they have a job, because you'll lose your job and can't pay your bills and everything that comes with that. Manitoba Justice Department has decided a website that promotes paintings by a convicted killer who cut up his victim in a hotel bathtub does not violate a law that prevents people from profiting from their crimes. So I guess he figured, well, let me put out a website. I paint. They said, well, we can't really stop you. It's not directly related to your crime. The department began an investigation into can art coast to coast. The site features paintings by Teerhuis-Moar alongside newspaper articles to describe his brutal killing of Robert and Greene. The author who received the letters from Teerhuis theorized the following based on his communications with Teerhuis. So this is kind of the prevailing theory on what really happened here. Susan Sarandon's stolen jewelry was the motive for Teerhuis' murder horror spectacle. Armed with the jewelry, he decided to end his reign of horror with the opportunity that presented itself to him. He was an experienced serial killer, disposing completely of his previous victims, leaving absolutely no trace of any evidence linking him to any other murder. When he discovered he was in possession of Susan Sarandon's jewelry, he hatched a plan to gain the fame he so desperately craved. Very carefully and surgically dismembering his victim, staging and posing the reassembled ghastly creation, minus all of the internal organs, then calmly walking into a police station to claim that he had passed out. When he awoke, he found the man cut into pieces. Grisly horror spectacle along with movie star Susan Sarandon's stolen jewelry, left for police to discover alone, should have gained him the fame he so badly needed. But he went on to grant interviews and write letters to Winnipeg journalists, but no one wanted or dared to know the entire story. We may never know how many people Sidney Teerhuis murdered. It seems fairly obvious that he made no attempt to cover up this murder, and rather seemed to go out of his way for the murder to be discovered, along with the jewelry belonging to Susan Sarandon. Was this a serial killer who simply decided that this was the way he wanted to retire or be prevented from killing more victims? Was the desire for fame simply greater than his desire for more victims? Most murderers don't have the comfort level with killing and dismembering that Teerhuis demonstrated when we're talking about someone's first killing someone. It does seem likely that this wasn't Teerhuis' first time. Hopefully it will at least be his last time. Despite being status Indian, his attorney missed the opportunity to have the judge apply Gladue principles in considering his sentence. Despite having killed a gay man, his attorney missed the opportunity to claim he panicked and murdered him due to an unproven rape. And his efforts to be deemed not criminally responsible due to intoxication and blackout was not successful, as there were other defendants who have been ruled not criminally responsible. He could have also simply just done so by saying he was mentally ill. With some more apt legal maneuvering, this could have ended up among the several other situations where someone commits a murder and little to nothing is done about it. It would seem a bit more common sense was applied in this case, that is likely due to the fact that he had a jury opposed to the judge rule. Regardless of how many Indigenous jurors there were, a judge would be more inclined to rule without emotion, and that didn't appear to be the outcome in this trial. If the intent was to gain infamy and notoriety, then that was accomplished. He paid a much stiffer price for this than others, which many might argue is fortunate for the rest of society. We can learn from this that monsters are still indeed very much among us. Preparing our meals in restaurants, having drinks at the bar, hanging out at the park, they are indistinguishable from the rest of society. Be wary of strangers who offer a good time back at their place of residence. With one end of Robert's intestines flushing down the toilet as they are being pulled from his stomach cavity, unfurling like a spool of rope, one might wonder how many flushes it took to get to the end of the roll. Winnipegology.